Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, and a happier video than last time out, guys, as we are going to pick the bones through Game Week 6 with another Elite Manager team reveal ahead of Game Week 7. We've got Mark back on the channel. We're going to be previewing all of Game Week 7 with the Man United fans. It's going to be super interesting. There are going to be timestamps on the video if you do want to hop around. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel, as I say. And Mark, welcome back to the channel, man. How have you been getting on?
Hi Tom. Good. Can't complain. Up and down over the course of the season, but I think everyone goes through the same thing, so
They
won't get too worked up about it.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned in the intro there, Mark, about how last week's video was a bit of a disaster there after what was a really tough game week for us all, wasn't it? So this one's a bit more fun. We've
Yeah,
got an awful lot of points to pick through in game week 6, and we're going to look at your team in just a few minutes. But we haven't had you on the channel for a few weeks though, Mark. So how would you sum up your beginning to the season? As I say, we'll talk about your game week 6 team in a few moments, but broadly, first few weeks of the season, how do you feel it's gone?
it's gone fine. I don't really think I've done anything wrong, but I think maybe things have just gone against me,
Hmm.
and especially today. If you'd interviewed me this morning, it would have been a very different conversation from what it is now.
Okay.
Um, Funny you should mention that, people felt worse about last week. I felt better about last week
Okay.
than I do about this week. I think everyone had a bad week last week and that was fine.
Yeah.
But in this week, maybe there's a little bit more, shall we say, variance around. I think some people have come out on the right side of an 8-0, which
Yeah.
nobody would have called.
Nobody would have called. You're absolutely right. So we're recording Sunday evening, shortly after the Sheffield United Newcastle game that Mark's referring to, and yeah, not many people would have foresawn that particular scoreline, would they? And it's funny, actually. You mentioned last week a good week to have a bad week. I think is what was doing the rounds on social media, wasn't it? And gosh, yeah, huge swings this time out. Anyway, Mark, look, we've seen the graph there. We can see your team value and whatnot. Not kind of too focused on that at the moment, but let's take a look at your game week 6 team. Have a look at how you did with the points, and I want to talk to you about your selection. So let's take a look at game week 6 for you. Cool. So here we go then, Mark. So we're looking at, again, we've just finished the round of fixtures in game week 6, and after bonus, you're coming out with a game week score there of 73 points, Mark. Before we get into some of the specifics, what were your feelings, or what are your feelings around that as a total here, and your feelings about the game week as a whole?
Yeah, not feeling great about it right now, which is strange,
Mm,
given, there's one, two, seven players out of the team have returned,
yeah.
but I'm on a red arrow.
Hmm.
I was on a 1 million green arrow this morning, and now I've ended up on a red. Um, the story of the week, I guess, was that I decided not to get Alvarez in for Jackson, and I could have.
Hmm.
Um, and the thing that would have allowed that was me to sell Rico Lewis to free up a third City spot,
Right.
and I did that. I sold him for Ethan Pinnock, which was kind of like a nothing move. And I could have done the Alvarez move, but I didn't,
Hmm.
which was fine. However, I could have got Dan Burn. And a second caveat to that was my plan all along was to get Botman, but then at the start of the week, Lewis fell in price. And then on Thursday, I think, as a lot of people will be aware, there was just a phantom Botman price rise. And the thing I wanted to do was Lewis to Botman.
Hmm.
And even more sickeningly, I could have still done Dan Burn. I had the money to do Dan Burn, and I didn't do Dan Burn because he was my fourth choice pick from the Newcastle
I
defense.
see.
So I completely read the game this afternoon wrong. I thought like maybe Newcastle might be a little bit physically jaded, a little bit, mentally not on it.
Hmm.
Sheffield United might, park the bus, grab a goal. Just read the game completely wrong. Um, I don't say I should have got burned, but it stings, when something like that happens.
Oh yeah.
And like Trippier is fine. Congratulations to the people who got Trippier.
Absolutely.
That was just, he's a premium. He can do it. We know it. But I think there's a lot of people out there who got Potman just as a make weight, and they've just come out really lucky.
Yeah. You're looking at one of them right here, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you got lucky, Tom. But I saw your wild card and you had Neto in it,
Yeah,
so
I did. Yeah, I
you know,
Nato was for all the
skill.
for all the algorithms in the world. I watched him on tally and thought he looked like a player, and I liked his Luton fixture,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I mean it was. Or rather, the fixture that he scored. I mean, it was the one shot he had in the game, and it was
yeah,
kind of not an encouraging performance, but a great outcome for me. But yeah, it's huge swings, isn't it? And for anyone else who
yeah.
wildcarded into this game week, and this video is not about me, but Mark mentioned it. I did wildcard going into this game week, and all throughout the week I was on treble Newcastle defence with Trippier as the third or Burn, and I went for the other two. So I can't whinge because I've got a double Newcastle defence and it
Yeah.
includes Botman, but I'm going to whinge. So these decisions can really swing wildly, can't they? And when such
Yeah.
massive outcomes happen in the games such as that.
I think everyone has to remember that. From your perspective, there's always things to complain about,
Mm-hmm.
but like everyone else's perspective, while it's not the same as yours, also contains things they can complain
Oh
about. So,
yeah.
I'm thinking, isn't it awful that Son scored two goals,
Yeah.
but Madison assisted those two
Sure.
goals? So it's all swings and roundabouts.
Mm-hmm.
What's frustrating me is that phantom price rise. I'm
Yeah.
calling it phantom because I don't think anyone really saw it coming. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe there
Possibly.
was something to do with his yellow flag. It's just a little frustrating, but I'll get over it.
Yeah.
I think I have an opportunity to get Trippier now, which we'll talk about later, which I
Definitely.
wouldn't have had under other circumstances.
Indeed, mate, and you could have been in a position where you wildcarded to a team that had neither Son or Madison. So there you go. That's why I'm the interviewer and
Yeah,
not the one being interviewed. Let me talk to you about this team, though, Mark. I want to understand your thoughts and feelings around this Chelsea team. Going to have to start with the misery. Chilwell obviously left out last week, and there was a lot of speculation as to whether or not he'd get his place back. Didn't happen for him. He's come on again for a cameo, another 0-pointer. What's the crack, man? What's your advice to the viewers here? What's the thought process? They've not performed well
what's
in
the
either
crack
games.
indeed?
What's
Yeah, what is the
what's the
crack?
plan?
I what is Poch doing? I didn't really think that Chilwell would get the start, but I didn't have a better option. You've got to go with the upside of Chilwell over Saliba.
Sure.
So now, again, we're in a similar place we were last week, where the discussion is, well, maybe he plays left wing, maybe he plays left back. They take out Thiago Silva, they move Colwell into left centre back. So now the discussion is going to be, right, well, Gusto's suspended, so are they going to move Disasi over to the right, Colwell into centre back, and then Chilwell's left back? But I don't really care at this point. He's done. When a guy keeps coming on and getting booked in my team for 0 points, that's it.
Gotta go,
You're
right?
out. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. I don't think that I was expecting that to be your answer, and presumably that would be your advice to anyone who's still got him, of which I'm sure there will be many. It's time now to cut your losses, particularly bearing in mind the Newcastle assets that we've kind of touched on already. Feels like quite a straightforward move to pivot there.
Yeah, minutes are king. Minutes are king here at this point, and we just don't know, and you can make up whatever story you like. But the issue is, it's not like as if he's coming into a well-oiled machine that's scoring goals for fun. They're keeping clean sheets the odd time, but not many. And it's all about minutes. And as you say, the Newcastle alternatives are there.
Yeah,
get him out.
And he's not an insignificant price point, is he, Chilwell? It's not like you've got Colwell sitting there, is it? It's actually money invested that could be used elsewhere. Jackson, another booking, another dismal return points wise. Presumably, he's also someone that you'd be looking to move on ASAP.
It boggles my mind that he got fifth booking. And this one, I didn't see the game, obviously. It wasn't on TV, but I was reading the text, whatever. And he got it for encroachment. And I'm pretty sure that's what he got it for last week. And he got the prior 3 for Mountain Off. And it's like, come on.
Engage brain, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
It's unusual to have a player who is... He's out. He must be out of control to a degree emotionally to be doing that. So also goodbye, Jackson.
Mhm.
You're out.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a lovely segue in a few moments, Mark, when we start talking about how your transfers will be shaping up going into game week 7. I suspect the viewers will probably have guessed how your free transfers might be being used and which personnel might be being moved on. But we'll come on to that in a moment. I want to talk to you. You're a Man United fan, Mark. We've got 3 players in here now. They've returned handsomely for you this week with Bruno Fernandes, that wonderful goal. Goodness me, what a finish. Onana, a clean sheet after his question marks in the Champions League, and Rashford he's been operating on the left hand side since Rasmus Højlund has come in. How are you feeling about Man United FPL wise, Mark? I mean, you and I have talked about them as a team wise in terms of what the central midfield looks like and what have you, but they've got a nice run of fixtures, haven't they? Are you still thinking that actually FPL
Yeah.
wise, this is still a team worth investing in?
Um, how do I feel about them? I think I've told you about my love of a metaphor before, Tom. They're like a roller coaster that you can't get off of. You're not enjoying it. You really wish you weren't there, but there's no way off.
Okay.
And that's what's happening here. You bad as they are, they're not doing what Chilwell and Jackson are doing. And they like Fernandez and Rashford are legitimately good
Of
players,
course, yeah.
in and of their own right. So my thoughts before this week were, for Chelsea and United, I won't be surprised if they turn around and smack somebody someday. Now, neither did, but I get the feeling United can. You know, Brentford weren't so great. Yesterday, Palace have had a few ropey results. So I'm not surprised if United do get 3 in one of these games and everybody's happy to own Rashford and Fernandez. But with Chelsea, it's incredible. I don't know how long Pochettino can go on.
No.
It's genuinely incredible
Yeah.
what's going on there. Like Gallagher's the captain, he seems to be the pivot for the attack. Why? Like do something else. It's not working.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to retain United. I'm probably looking at a pretty short wildcard window now, in the next few
Yeah.
weeks. But if I want to make some improvements between now and then, it's the Chelsea players who need to go.
Of course, that makes sense. And it'd be remiss of us not to mention the Man United are expecting pretty key personnel to return to the fold pretty soon, aren't they, Mark? In the likes of the new signing Amrabat, Mason Mount coming back to fitness, Rafael Varane, etc. It does feel like actually that an upturn in how they play could be resulting from that as well.
Yeah, and I think another thing to kind of keep an eye on is maybe Casemiro maybe playing his way to something approaching the
Okay.
fitness levels of a professional footballer. I think we could see maybe he got back a few times, made some good challenges. Maybe it's taken him a while to get going, but I think maybe he's going to come into his stride a little bit more. It happened last season.
Yeah.
So I think as a outside of FPL as a United fan, I'm not too pessimistic, but I'm not really too optimistic either. But I wouldn't say there's anything that can't be fixed quite easily with some fitness and some morale and some issues outside the footballing
I
arena
see.
going away.
Well, let's try and bring it back to FPL. And so let's say if the viewers are watching and they've got the double offensive selection there that you've got in terms of Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, would the advice then be, team dependent, of course, but the advice be actually this is something to keep hold with, keep some faith with, bearing in mind the upcoming fixtures that you referred to, and actually this could be FPL assets worth keeping the faith with.
Yeah, they are worth keeping, but I think the challenge that many people will have, especially going into week 8, is how do you get Son in? And for me, I did think Foden was the obvious avenue, and he probably still is, given who he plays in game week 8. Mm-hmm. But what we see is, again, in the North London derby today, their games of goals.
Yeah.
So are you really worried? I think I'd be worried about playing Saliba in that game, but Foden, Haaland, Saka, probably fine.
No problem.
To play them. Mm-hmm. So then, like if you look across those 5, those guys are all going to return big every few weeks. And I think you're playing with fire, but it's worth it with Son against Luton.
Yeah.
So personally, United's game in 8 is against Brentford, I think.
In game week 8, yeah, they're home to Brentford in game week 8.
Yeah.
That's right. Crystal Palace in
Um,
game week 7.
yeah, I'll have a look at that game, see how it goes, see how I feel
Yeah.
about Brentford, like as an opposition in and of themselves, and then decide who to move on out of Rashford and Fernandes. But I don't think there's a right or wrong, or there's not a good answer, because both can do anything anytime.
Yeah, fair enough. And Brentford had a really very bad day at the office, didn't they? In the home game against Everton in game week 6. I think they've probably earned enough credit over the last little while to think that could be as I say, a bad day rather than something more indicative of that. Is that your read, or are you thinking this is actually now a bit problematic with Rico Henry being out for the season, some other injury issues? How are you sort of seeing them as a defensive unit of which many people will have invested in as well?
Yeah, I kind of, it was a little bit weak getting Pinnock because I haven't really been into the whole Brentford thing. I didn't get Mbeumo at any point. I think they'll be a team that are up and down. Everton, despite their results, they're putting up reasonable
They
numbers. I
were,
think it was fair
yeah.
to say that this was coming. It wasn't too surprising. But with Brentford, they play so differently in different games. Some teams play more defensively or more offensively in games. Brentford don't just do that; they change their whole formation. So I think you'll get that unpredictability with them, and they don't have maybe the individual quality to paper over bad performances like somebody like United do, where they can have Fernandes score a volley from a ridiculous place.
What a goal it was. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. All right, mate, that's pretty clear to me. I mean, I guess that kind of answers a question around a player who you don't have, who I wanted to get your thoughts on, which is Flecken in goal for Brentford. They're a very popular pick. Didn't look great in that Everton game, so yeah, I think there's going to be managers one. If that's your only problem, though, guys, I think you're doing pretty well, to be fair. All right, mate. That's game week 6 in the book. So let's take a look at how you're thinking about shaping up ahead of game week 7 before we talk about your potential wildcard plans a little bit further down the road. Okay, Mark. So this is what we're envisaging now. Obviously, there are some midweek fixtures for us to navigate as ever, guys. So keep your powder dry in that respect. But this is how the team might be shaping up ahead of game week 7 with a couple of transfers made. Mark, do you want to talk to us about what they might be and what the thought processes are around there? It's nice to see some different team graphics. We've put Finley to the test here and actually using some team strips here, which we've not used to seeing in Elite Manager selection. So talk to us about the new signings.
Yeah. Flashing lights warning. Yeah, this is what I suggest. I thought I might do before the Newcastle game, and it was to move Trippier in for Chilwell and to move Morris in for Jackson. Nothing that, surprisingly, nothing that has happened in a Newcastle game has changed my mind on this.
Yeah, but maybe a triple captaincy to be put on Trippier, maybe. Other than that, yeah. No, I mean he looks a hell of a catch, doesn't he? And nice that you can get there with Chilwell, as I mentioned his price point before. Presumably, it's a little bit more easy for you to get there than it will be for others.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, what I wanted to do really was to do Lewis to Botman this week, and the real reason I didn't do Alvarez Jackson. There was a few reasons. It was that maybe his numbers were good. I didn't really want to, chase points on Alvarez. And really, when I looked at Alvarez and I looked at my game week 8 team, it wasn't going the way I wanted. So, I Phil Foden already, so I backed away from that move. But also I wanted to roll the transfer because it was very much in my mind. As I mentioned, I didn't think Chilwell was getting the start, and I was thinking of this switch before this week, and that's why I wanted to roll the transfer.
I see.
To be able to do this. As I mentioned as well, Burn would have been my fourth choice. Newcastle defensive asset. Trippier is my first choice. So that's how I landed here. Now I think on Morris, it is what it is. I think we all go in with our eyes wide open,
Mm-hmm.
right? We know what this is, and um, probably an inadvertent handball or a clumsy foul that allows him to get a penalty will be the difference between this being success and failure.
Yeah.
Um, one thing to consider here is, do I get Trippier or do I get Botman? Um,
Mm-hmm.
because as I mentioned before, I'm looking at getting Son. If I get Trippier, I have very limited ways to get to Son. I basically have to sell Saka. If I get Botman, then I have every way to get to Son, for I can swap any of my midfielders for Son.
I see.
And I think it's a move I'm going to make tonight.
Yeah.
So when people see this video, it will very likely have happened already.
Well, maybe you can update in the comments once the video's live, Mark, and let people
Sure.
know what you've done. I mean, just on that, then, if you've got that thought process in, at a high level, do you think Trippier at the 6.5, circa 6.5 price point warrants the difference between Botman? Is he circa 2 million more in value? What's your opinion?
He's not.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
He's not on the whole, but he probably is over the 3 weeks that I'm looking at to Wildcard.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there may not be better things for me to do. But that's why I say I have a decision here, is what would I do with that 2 million in game weeks, going into game week 8 and 9?
Yeah.
That's what we'll decide. So I need to think about that tonight.
Yeah.
I don't really want to lose out the amount of money that's going to go under the bridge this week.
Mm-hmm.
Morris is going to go up maybe twice. Jackson can go down twice, I reckon.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
The Newcastle guys are going to go up. Chilwell's going to go tonight. And before COVID, I was very much an early transfers person. That was especially early in the season, I was always early transfers.
Okay.
And it can go wrong sometimes, and other times it doesn't. But that was in the days before there was so much rotation and people placed so much emphasis on what came out in leaks and press conferences. So I've kind of fallen into this habit, which I don't like, of waiting until the last minute.
Yeah.
And, if I had made an early transfer last week, things would be a lot better. So, maybe I'm a little bit stung by that. But also the prospect of maybe having a 0.4, 0.5 price swing this week between now and Saturday makes me think I'll take the chance. And if something happens during the week, I'll take a -4. Fine.
Okay, noted. It's got on screen at the moment here, Mark. It's 2 transfers made. Would this be a -4, or are you rocking in with 2 frees?
No, that's what I was saying. I didn't really go for the Jackson to Alvarez, which I could have because I wanted this extra transfer.
Yeah, so it wouldn't cost you anything right now, I see.
It would be free, yeah.
Yeah, nice one, I see. And look, and we mentioned off camera as well. I mean, when we put the slide together, obviously there was a bit of an unknown. It was a bit in advance of some of the games being played out and what have you. You've got Estepinian sitting on the bench here behind Pinnock, for example. Is that going to be the case come game week 7? You got any thoughts around whether or not that might flip the other way? What's your thoughts on those two?
I'd probably play Estepinian, I think. He's just got that little X factor that only 1 or 2 or 3 defenders have. But one of the reasons that I made the transfer I made was just to get a little bit of certain depth in the team. And like Pinnock is, touch wood, as nailed can be.
Yes, yeah. That's right.
So even if someone dropped out of that 11, I think I'd be okay playing Pinnock or Estepinian.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting. Yeah, nice. Like I say, nice to see so double game week being recognised here. Outside of Morris, I mean, it's fair, right? I mean, if you look on the algorithm predictions on Fix, they still consider it notable for discussion, right? There's still a double game week, so consequently, you're seeing Luton and Burnley reflected really positively over the projections. So algorithm-wise, they're suggesting it's worth looking at. Anybody else at all in either the Luton or Burnley teams that are of any interest to you, Mark, or that you'd recommend if situation was different? Or is it just Morris?
I think, yeah. Okay, so I think with Burnley, you can watch one of their games and you can think, oh, now I'd like to get maybe Colosho. And you can think, yeah, that would be a nice signing. But I couldn't recommend it. He looks like a good, interesting player, but you couldn't get him.
No.
He's in midfield. I think people look at Trafford, but the Burnley double is Newcastle.
Yeah. Who've just put 8 past Sheffield United away from home, right?
Yeah, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
But if Trafford had saved those 8 shots today, he would have hauled.
That's
So
a good point. Yeah.
So I don't think many people will go near Burnley, and I don't think many people will even have some. Bayer might be in a few teams. On Luton, I kind of was looking at Bell maybe,
cheap option
or
at the back.
Kabore. I think that also would have been a better transfer than what I did for Pinnock. Pinnock, who I might add, was in the Fix Algorithm Team of the Week, so that was interesting.
A gremlin in the code. Yeah, a gremlin in the code.
No, I think it was a fair shout. I don't regret getting Pinnock. Like for Pinnock, I regret it because I was so close to getting Byrne and Botman.
Yeah, definitely.
I think if you got Kabore, if you got Bell,
play him.
Good.
Yeah,
good. Yeah, good.
It's a good shout. Absolutely. I didn't ask the question actually, but I suspect a lot of people will have had Bell there as a make weight from game week 1. So you're saying if that's the case, worth rolling the dice and getting them into the team for that double?
Look, if you're playing FPL and you don't put your doublers on the pitch, what you do?
Yeah, here. Got to be done.
Forget about it.
Yeah, no fun
Just
to
have the crack.
Can't bench a double game weeker. Can't do it. Can't do it in good faith, can you?
I think so. No.
All right, mate. Look, last question on this before we look at a prospect of a game week 10 wild card. Looking on screen here, you've got prospect of Trippier or Botman, and you're going to qualify that in the comments. Do you think very quickly we're going to get to the stage of needing double Newcastle defence to be worth including with effective ownership and whatnot? Do you think that's going to be a reality pretty quickly?
Double defence isn't something that I like to do, really. I'm looking at their fixtures here on the other screen. It could be very attractive for sure. I see some people who are there already. I'd be going there next week if I had got Byrne in, so I wouldn't advise against it.
No, fair enough.
Sure, I think.
Okay, mate.
I think it's one of these cases where if the players are the best options, it doesn't matter that they're in the same team.
No, I agree, and that run it is a nice run, isn't it? And seeing how they've reacted against a pretty turgid Sheffield United side, to be fair, it's impressive after an away trip in the Champions League. So yeah, we watch with interest. All right, mate. Final topic. Then we're going to move on and check out what your thoughts are around the prospect of a wild card just a few game weeks down the road. Okay, so obviously there's an awful lot of football that needs to happen before game week 10. But when we were talking about this and preparing for the show, we were talking about how you're intending to use the wildcard, Mark, and you were suggesting around game week 10 looks to be how you're intending to use it, and this is kind of how you're thinking things would shape up here. Do you want to talk to us about the overall thoughts around that sort of timing and the personnel there? I'm seeing triple Aston Villa straight away, and I'm intrigued. What's the thought process ahead of this wildcard, mate?
Okay, to talk about the timing first, the first thing I'd say is that I think everyone's aware there's a fixture swing. That's pretty, it's been covered. And a lot of people will go in game week into game week 9. So I think they're calling that the game week 8 wildcard.
That's right.
Or is it the game week 9 wildcard?
Yeah, after the IB.
Yeah, and my hesitation there, and I've been saying this before what happened last week, is coming out of an international break. We really don't know what's going on. They can be unusual games where the favourite clubs take a little while to get going. Like you saw maybe Liverpool against Wolves, they just couldn't get into gear until the second half. And you just get some unusual results. You get people maybe who are coming back from South America or wherever, and they get rested. So for that reason, I probably prefer a game week 10 wildcard. And I think it plays nicely with some of the fixture swings as well. As you can see from this draft here, it particularly plays nicely with Aston Villa's nice run. Yeah. It's a reasonably good run. It's got Tottenham and City in there, but it's also got Fulham, Forest, Luton, Bournemouth. So I think
They look a
there's
good
plenty of
side,
Villa in
Mark, don't they?
there.
Villa. They just look an actual bona fide good side this year under Emery. You know, they've. I know Chelsea are in no great shakes at the moment, but the games I've seen Villa play, I don't know what your thoughts are, but they look legit to me.
Yeah, I think since Emery came in, whenever it was, maybe it must be over a year now, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
They've been really good attacking. I think he's one of these managers who suffers from reputational issues due to maybe some media ribbing he gets from his time at Arsenal. But like, he's a serious guy. He's a serious manager. He's done big things,
Yeah.
and he's made a real impact at Villa. So the only question you have about them is how they deal with the continued involvement in Europe, and it seems to be okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So yeah, as you're alluding to, the backbone of that team is indeed Villa. That team is kind of a mix of fixtures and players who I think are good long-term picks.
Yeah.
And there's going to be most wildcards, I think, with Salah in them. So I thought this might be a little bit of an alternative, maybe a slightly different formation from what you'll see in the majority of wildcards. The 3-4-3 without Salah is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But, you've got the likes of Eze in there.
Well, I was going to say, I was looking at the bench there, seeing Eze on the bench, so presumably he'd be part of an intentional rotation strategy. I've certainly seen that talked about before in terms of how he's performed against the better sides versus the more tough fixtures. So what would the plan be with him? Would that be rotating out for one of the Aston Villa offensive players week to week? And presumably you'd keep the faith with Watkins fixture irrespective?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's more towards an attempt to have a balanced squad that can deal with injuries and allow you to roll transfers more often. If you can remember that I have two injured Sheffield United players now. I had Rico Lewis, so it really compromised me a lot. And as we come into maybe Christmas, a little bit of rotation, the fixtures come thick and fast. Maybe you just benefit from having good players on the bench, Caldwell and Eze. And any week, if you ship an injury or a suspension, then you don't have to panic. You can just bring in one of these guys who can show up.
Makes sense.
But I think maybe one of the things to do on this wild card is to think of things in terms of set and forget. If you were picking a set and forget, just get a good squad that you can fashion around a bit. But the big thing here is that it hasn't got Salah. It's got a distribution of funds. I might very much change my mind on that at the time.
Yeah, and let's talk about him, right? Because I saw on social media today Salah being compared FPL-wise to how Harry Kane was last season in terms of that optimal price point. I say optimal, expensive, premium price point, but an incredible run of consecutive returns, right? Mark, expanding over the last, going back into last season as well, but without those kind of massive hauls kind of putting people off. What's your, he's not in this wildcard squad. What's your thoughts around Salah as an FPL prospect or an FPL asset right now and going into the winter period? How are you feeling about him and Liverpool as a whole?
They will score a lot of goals, and I think. Okay, so there's a few questions there. At Liverpool as a whole, I think they're going to score a lot of goals. If one of the reasons that you might put three up front is to have the option on Darwin. He scored again today. He scored 2 in midweek. The fact that he started Thursday, Sunday, it looks good for him. It looks like he's nailing that down. In terms of Salah, I think the situation with Salah is exactly the same as it was at the start of the season. Nobody is saying that Salah isn't a great pick. The context is Haaland and captaincy. And if you look at the 4 midfielders there, Bruno matched him this week. Maddison was 1 point short. Saka did better. So he's not outperforming a pool of maybe 5 to 10 midfielders by the amount his price would suggest he should.
Beautifully
and
done. Yeah.
What's factored into his pricing is the potential captaincy. and I think he's always going to score. He's always going to get these returns. But you think about that, you take that 3 million off him, take down to Fernandez or Rashford or whoever, and you put 1 million into defense. You put two of that into your attack, and your points are, you're making it up, and you might be doing better than having Salah.
I see.
If Darwin is a prospect, I wouldn't even think about Salah. If Darwin was playing every game,
I see. Yeah.
Darwin would be straight in.
Interesting. So, I mean, people looking to get Son ahead of game week 8, you mentioned as well. If they're sitting there with Mo Salah in their team, do you think it's a reasonable means by which to get to him for that? I know we're looking ahead to game week 7 here, but in terms of game week 8 prospects to potentially get to Heung-min Son, would you say that that's something you'd entertain if you were in that situation?
You're going to trip me up here, and I'm aware I'm talking in contradictions, but I wouldn't do that, because I think if you have him now, you're in a really good place, because other people are going to either wildcard or they're going to maybe take hits and struggle to get him in for the Everton game. So I wouldn't swap him for Son, but I guess what I'm saying is, that's a bad answer. It's fine either way.
Yeah.
I think if you make the right picks elsewhere, then Salah's fine. Where Salah comes into his own is if Haaland blows up.
Yeah, good point. At which point then it becomes a completely different conversation, doesn't it? Great observation as well, Mark, about Darwin there. I hadn't realised the short turnaround there in terms of the starts there in midweek from the Europa League as well. That definitely bodes well for him.
He was on my mind this weekend, but because you look at on Thursday night, he scores 2 goals, great. He played 90 minutes, not great. And like, where does that leave you? It leaves you with keeping Jackson, which is
cannot be the answer. If Jackson is the answer, then I'm asking the wrong questions, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. And on that bombshell, let's wrap it up, Mark. Unless there is anything else you wanted to get across in this week's video.
No, I don't think so. I'm slightly tilted in this video by that Newcastle defensive outcome.
You won't be alone, man. There'll be lots of people watching who'll be in exactly the same boat. So hey, there's always another game week, right? At this stage of the season, there's lots of game weeks coming thick and fast, and it sounds like you got.
And you know what? It's not like as if any of it matters.
Not at all. All right, pal. Lots of great comments as always, and thanks ever so much for joining us again. And we'll get you back on the channel really soon, I'm sure, and see how that rank is kicking on and improving. Guys, do please drop a comment down below and talk to Mark about his game week plans ahead of game week 7, and of course his game week 10 wildcard thoughts as well. Do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel if you haven't already done so, as we push forward to 40,000 subscribers. And do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com as well. There's lots of elite managers' thoughts on the blog and lots of other tools that you can go and get involved with. But that's it for this week, guys. I'll be back next week with another video. So until then, have a great week. Take care. Speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.